Here we are back at Stony Creek Metro Park for a walk in the winter wonderland. We're back by our tree that we started at in the fall. You can see all the leaves fell off. No more leaves. So our little tulip tree has lost all its leaves. It's dormant right now, which is kind of like it's sleeping. But in the spring, of course, it will grow new leaves. Well, let's take a walk and see what we can find. And see if I can avoid getting snow in my boots as I come back that way. I was relatively unsuccessful. Up here, there are some really big icicles. Now the icicles form when the drips of water come down off the roof, and then they drip along and they freeze on the ends. And then the next drip comes down and freezes, and the next drip comes down and freezes. So it makes these long, beautiful icicles. But we don't want to stand under them because if they fall on your head, that would be really dangerous. So I'm going to stand over here. Other times of year, when you look down from the spot, you can see a lot of green. But this time of year, you can see a lot of white. You can see the river really well, except for parts of it that have iced over. We can hear birds. We can see the ground way better than we can in the summertime. And we can see farther than we can in the summertime because there's no leaves blocking our view. We can see into the woods where we couldn't usually see this during other times of year. There's lots of birds out here making a lot of little chirpy noises, going about their winter business, finding some food in the woods. So these are called cleats. They go on the bottom of my boots. And they have these little pointy parts that dig into the snow so I don't slip. So I put them on my boots like this. There we go. And this will help me grip the snow so I don't slip. These dig into the snow and the ice so that I can walk and not slip on the snow and the ice. We're at the bridge over Stony Creek. Over that way, you can see the creek running over some rocks. So it's really running, and so it's not frozen up there. When water's moving really quickly, it doesn't freeze. But down here, where it's running a little bit more slowly and not over the rocks, it's gotten frozen. But it's not safe to go on because it's not evenly frozen. There could be parts that are pretty thick and parts that are pretty thin. So you should never, ever, ever go out on a frozen river because it wouldn't be safe. But you can see little animal footprints. Looking the other way down Stony Creek, we can see some dark patches and light patches in the ice. And this is what I was telling you about. You can never quite tell if it's going to be a thick part or a thin part when it's on running water. So that's why you should never go on running water ice, because it could be thick, it could be thin, you could go through it any time. But the interesting thing is that ice is on top of the water, so the fish are still okay down there. They're swimming around in the water underneath, and they're just fine. In the spring, when all of this melts, they'll still be down there. But up here, it looks pretty cold and hard, doesn't it? Can you see all the beautiful patterns that the ice has made on top? In some places it looks dark. In some places you can see bubbles trapped in the ice. In other places it looks like crystal patterns. And all along the river there are cedar trees here. And there's a lot of birds that keep flying in and out of the cedar trees. Maybe they've found something to eat over there, or they're just trying to find a place out of the wind. Let's keep going. Here's a good spot to see the differences in the thickness of the ice. So closer to the bank, it kind of looks like it's just ice, right? But look, as you get closer and closer to the water, it gets really thin, and you never know when you're going to get to a spot that's thin, when there's water running underneath the ice. Up there, we can hear the water because it's running over those rocks, and that's what's keeping it from freezing here. It's running pretty quickly down over the rocks. If it was another time of the year, we would have trouble even seeing this part of the river because there'd be so much green growing up between us and the river that we might not even be able to see over it to see the river here. But in the wintertime, all that has died back. All we can see are some brown twigs from last year's growth, some little red berries that grew last year, and we can see the river really well. Okay, not sure why, but there's two robins up there on the frozen ice. Robins are a bird that go away for the winter and come back in the spring. Apparently, they're a little bit early. They look like they're looking for some food. Not sure why they're here so early, because it doesn't look too springy out here, does it? Here's another spot where we can see the differences in the ice. Some parts look really thick and some parts are very thin. We're not going to go out on that ice because that would be dangerous. But it's very pretty, isn't it? We can see footprints from little animals that have been out on the ice. If we look up, we can see the white pine trees. They're the only green we can really see right now. We don't notice them so much in the summertime, but these are evergreen trees, or coniferous trees, because they have cones. So coniferous means cone-bearing trees. White pine is Michigan's tree. There they are. They are very distinctive in the wintertime because they're really the only green tall thing out here right now. There's a white pine up close. You can see it has bark that's kind of scaly, not as smooth as a red pine. It can get deeper for an older tree, and a lot of the needles are way up there because they're in a spot where they can find the sun. I'll show you some of the needles up close here in a moment. They're very bendable, and they don't pick at all. They're not picky. They're very gently ticklish, and when you hear the wind in the white pines, it sounds beautiful. So I have a little bundle of white pine needles that have fallen. I picked them up off the ground, and the way you tell that it's a white pine tree, besides the fact that it's just very gentle needles, or this would be the leaves of the tree, we call them pine needles, is that they're in bunches. Pine needles come in bunches. And every bunch on a white pine tree has 5 needles. So here's one bunch, and we can count them. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So each little bunch has 5 very soft, bendable needles. And yes, my fingers are getting sap on them. That's the interesting thing about white pines. They do make sap, and so your fingers will get sticky. So I'll leave this here for the animals, and let's continue on our way. In the fall, we looked at these oak trees, and we looked at the shape of their leaves. And you can see they still have kept some of their leaves. Oak trees tend to keep some of their leaves through the winter time, and so you can hear them rattling in the breezes. They're still attached. And of course they will fall off before the next batch comes. But if you see trees that are pretty tall like that with brown leaves rattling in the wind in the wintertime, it's probably an oak tree. We've stopped here before. In the spring, in the summer, in the fall, it looks very different from how it looks now. Usually it's covered with green, sometimes with the colors of flowers, sometimes milkweed, sometimes butterflies, but now it's wintertime. And all the grasses and plants and flowers have died. You can see the leftovers on the hillside. Under the ground, there's a lot of roots that are still alive, waiting to come up in the spring. But right now, everything's kind of dormant, sleeping under the snow, waiting for spring, waiting for a little bit more warm, and the water to start coming from the snow, melting. And then it will be spring again, and everything will become green again. But right now, it's just fun to listen to the grasses whirring in the wind. The nice thing about winter is that you can see a lot of tracks. So you can tell the animals have been here even when you don't see them. Now, we did see a deer in the woods a little bit ago, but it would be very hard to show it to you on the video. Hopefully we'll see another one. But we can see evidence that the deer have been here. This is some hoof prints here, and we can see more down on the open parts over here. Tracks out there showing us that deer have been here, squirrels, probably some rabbits, all kinds of animals have been here. And of course the trail coming up here showing us that people have been here. In just a few months, looking down here, we won't be able to see the trail going out into the woods or the trail coming back from the woods. It will all be green and grown up. We'll barely even be able to see the pond down there. The pond that's all sleeping under the ice, surrounded by cattails. There's a few footprints on it right now from probably a deer. But it's sleeping down there under the ice. Now remember, the frogs and the fish that live there will still be okay. They're all under the ice. Frogs will be napping down in the mud, and the turtles too. The fish will be swimming around under the ice. And when the ice melts, they'll all come out and do their summer and spring things. But right now, they're all under the ice and everything is quiet. As soon as the snow starts to melt, this pond will get nice and wet, full of all the water that the melting snow brings it. But right now, you can see it's quiet. All the tree stumps and fallen trees are covered with snow hats, and everything is quiet. Now on the one log, I do see some footprints. Somebody has scampered across the log down there. In a few months, we'll hear frogs here. It'll be green. And all the snow that we can see around here will be melted. And the water that it brings will all be down in the pond, or soaked into the earth, of course. This tree is not an oak tree, but it is one of the kinds that does keep some leaves around during the wintertime. If you look through the woods, you can see more of its kind with beautiful, beautiful leaves hanging. Just twittering in the wind. You can see they almost are like paper. Very beautifully shaped, making a beautiful sound. What is this strange print? We can see a drag, a round hole with a poke part in the middle. Huh, what animal made that? Well, that's a human. A human probably on snowshoes or cross-country skis, and that's their pole that went into the snow on the side to help them keep their balance. So cross-country skiers have two poles that they use to go cross-country skiing with, and it helps them balance. And sometimes snowshoers use them too. And that's the print of a pole. So we know someone's been here trying to keep their balance in the snow. See those lumps in the snow? Well, during other times of year, you would see logs and stumps sticking up. But now they're just a lump in the snow. We can't see what's under them with that fresh blanket of white stuff covering them. Here's our pond where we hear frogs in the summer and in the spring. We can see little tadpoles and water bugs. Under the bridge, you can see there's no water. What happened to the water? Well, it dried up in the fall, but don't worry, all this snow that's sitting here very quietly will melt, and it will fill up the pond with water for the spring, so the frogs can go on singing in the pond, and the tadpoles will have somewhere to swim, and the little water bugs. So all of this snow will serve a big purpose in the spring. It will melt, fill up the pond, especially with all the spring rains, and we will have a full pond again. That was a big hill. Now I'm sitting down, enjoying the beautiful sunshine and the wind and the beautiful view. Down there we can see lots of tracks from animals who have been in the meadow. And we can hear the rustling of the wind. Okay, I'll get off the bench. Now you can be really glad you have cleats on. It's really slippery. So quiet. You can see bird nests from last summer and spring. And all the twigs and vines from last year. And all the beautiful branches sticking up into the sky. And the trees are squeaking in the wind. It's a beautiful winter day. Ooh, little feet. We're back to Stony Creek again. And we can see running water and ice. Definitely would not want to go on this ice unless you were little, like the animals that made the footprints down there. Tough to tell exactly what made those footprints, but you can see some right here and some right there that are very tiny, hopping along in the snow. Down there we can see The water rushing out from under the ice and then back under again. We can even see a part where the ice has clung to the sticks above the ice, and the water isn't that high right now. But the ice is still up there, kind of hanging around. It makes very pretty patterns. And up above, a couple of white pines, straight ahead, and a few cedars to the left. Let's look on the other side of the bridge too. Oh, lots more footprints. And if we look right straight down, you can see the water running there. You would not want to step on that ice. But it's very pretty, isn't it? Different colors, different shades, patterns in it. And a little farther out, more footprints from where animals have crossed the ice. They're light enough that they don't fall through. And the creek just winds its way along very quietly under its blanket of snow and ice. We stopped here in the fall when everything was beautiful gold. And all the light was golden from the golden leaves up there. Now all the leaves are down, and instead of a golden light, it's a white light from the snow and the breezes rustling the white pines and the little few leaves left up there. You can smell snow and cold breezes. Winter has a beauty all its own. In a few months, it'll be green again. But for now, everything sleeps for winter.